Story 1. Robert Lee Tarver Jr. was born in 1947 in the state of Alabama. He was a black male. His family lived in the rural parts of the state. They did not have much money. They were poor. Robert grew up with his uncle, Johnny Blue. His uncle later said that Robert had a normal childhood. The family did not have many things, but Robert did not have major problems when he was young. He went to school like other children. He played and he helped around the house. Robert lived with his grandmother, Addie Upshaw, for part of his life. His aunt, Deborah Upshaw, also lived in the same house sometimes. Robert was close to his grandmother. Later, when he was an adult, he sometimes stayed at her house. He did work for her, like fixing things and cleaning. She paid him with checks for the work he did. When Robert was 18 years old, he got married. His wife died of cancer in 1968. After her death, Robert did not marry again. He did not have a wife or children of his own to take care of. He lived alone or with family members. Robert had a son from a relationship. He also had a sister. He cared about his family. Later in his life, he would give his watch to his son. He would give his personal papers to his sister. Robert did not finish a lot of school. He left school earlier than most children. He did not go to college. He worked at different jobs when he could find them. Sometimes he was out of work. One time, he was out of work for 1 month before something important happened. As a young man, Robert got into trouble with the law. He was convicted of robbery. He was sent to prison for that crime. He was later released on parole in October 1982. Parole meant he was allowed to leave prison early, but he had to follow rules. The rules were, he had to report to his parole officer, he had to keep a job, and he had to pay fees. Robert did not follow these rules. He failed to report to his parole officer. He did not keep a job. He did not pay the fees. Because of this, his parole was taken away. He was supposed to go back to prison, but at the time of a later event, he was still out of prison under a sentence of imprisonment. Robert smoked Salem brand cigarettes. That was his habit. He also drank Budweiser beer. He liked to go to places where people gathered, like Mary's Lounge, a bar or club in the area. He played pool there sometimes. Robert lived in the area around Russell County, Alabama. This was a rural place. There were small towns like Cottonton, Pittsview, Glenville, and Jernigan. People knew each other. Robert knew many people in the area. One person he knew was a man named Andrew Lee Richardson. They were friends. They spent time together. Robert also knew a store owner named Hugh Sims Kite. Mr. Kite was a white male. He was 63 years old. He owned a store called Kite's Grocery and Bait Store on Highway 165 in Cottonton, Alabama. The store was like a community center. People gathered there. Mr. Kite also ran a post office inside the store. Most people in the area knew Mr. Kite. Robert knew him too because Robert lived nearby. On the afternoon of a certain day in September 1984, Robert was at his grandmother's house. Andrew Richardson was there too. Robert told his Aunt Deborah that there was a gun in the chair where Richardson was sitting. Robert said the gun was for protection. That gun belonged to a woman named Esther Dennis. Robert had borrowed it from her one Saturday. He kept it for about a week and a half. Robert did not have a job at that time. He had been out of work for 1 month before that September. He spent his time driving his car, a late 1970s Chevrolet Impala. The car had tires that were all different from each other. The car originally belonged to his Aunt Deborah, but she gave it to Robert. That was how Robert Lee Tarver Jr. lived his life before the events of September 15, 1984. He was 37 years old. He had a criminal past. He was out of work. He had a gun that did not belong to him. And he had a friend named Andrew Richardson, who would later say that Robert asked him to go for a ride one evening. On the evening of September 15, 1984, Robert Lee Tarver Jr. was at his grandmother's house in Pittsview, Alabama. He decided to go out. He went to his car, a late 1970s Chevrolet Impala. He drove to a store called Knott's Grocery. There, He bought 2 cans of Budweiser beer. He put the beers on the front seat of his car. Then Robert drove to the house of his friend, Andrew Lee Richardson. Richardson lived in nearby Glenville. Robert arrived around 7:30 or 8 p.m. Central Time. Robert had with him some extra items, a pair of coveralls, a wig, and a stocking mask. He also had the gun he had borrowed from Esther Dennis. It was a Colt single-shot revolver, a .38 caliber handgun. The gun was loaded. Robert asked Richardson to go for a ride. Robert said he would not be gone long. He said he had some business to do with a white man. Then Robert put on the coveralls, the wig, and the stocking mask. He asked Richardson if the disguise would fool anyone. Richardson looked at him. The 2 men left Richardson's house in Robert's Chevrolet. Robert drove the car. He drove down Highway 165. They passed a store called Kite's Grocery and Bait Store. Robert did not stop there yet. He continued driving to a place called Emel's Club. Richardson went inside the club to look for his brother. Richardson did not find his brother inside. He came back to the car. Robert then drove back down Highway 165. He turned off the highway into a pasture. This pasture was south of the railroad tracks. The pasture was owned by the same man who owned the store, Hugh Sims Kite. Robert drove down a dirt road inside the pasture. He drove to a fork in the road. He pulled the car into the middle of the fork next to a tree. Then he backed the car up into a grassy area. He turned the car so it was facing back toward the highway. This way he could leave quickly. Robert and Richardson sat in the car and talked. Robert drank one of his Budweiser beers. He finished the beer and left the empty can on the ground near where the car was parked. At some point, Robert told Richardson, "I hate to do it, but I have to." He told Richardson to take the car home and park it if Robert did not come back. Then Robert got out of the car. He put on the wig and the stocking mask. He started walking toward Kite's store. The store was about 300 yards away from where the car was parked. While Robert was walking away, Richardson stayed in the car. Richardson waited. At the store that evening, the owner, Hugh Sims Kite, was closing up for the night. A 10-year-old boy named Jerry Ford was helping him. Mr. Kite told the boy to stand out in front of the store. Mr. Kite said he needed to put some ice in the back of his truck. His truck was parked behind the store. Mr. Kite walked around the corner of the building to the back of the store. It was around 9:15 p.m. Eastern Time. A woman named Cynthia Sue Howard was camping in the pasture south of the railroad tracks. She saw car lights in the pasture about 300 yards away from her. Robert Tarver walked from the pasture toward the back of Kite's store. He was wearing the wig and mask. He had the .38 caliber revolver in his hand. When he reached the back of the store, he found Mr. Kite standing near his truck. Robert pointed the gun at Mr. Kite. Robert shot Mr. Kite 3 times. 1 bullet hit Mr. Kite in the chest. 2 bullets hit Mr. Kite in the right thigh. The shots were fired from more than 30 inches away. There was no gunpowder residue on Mr. Kite's shirt or pants, which meant the gun was not very close to his body when it was fired. The 10-year-old boy, Jerry Ford, was waiting in front of the store. He heard 2 shots. He went around to the back of the store and called for Mr. Kite. Mr. Kite did not answer. The boy went back to the front of the store and waited there. Mr. Kite fell to the ground. He was still alive for a short time, but the bullet in his chest caused his death. The coroner later found 3 gunshot wounds on his body. Mr. Kite died at the scene. After shooting Mr. Kite, Robert took Mr. Kite's money. Mr. Kite normally carried a wallet in his left hip pocket. The wallet was not found on his body after the shooting. His left front pocket had been pulled 3/4 inside out, meaning someone had reached into that pocket. Inside and just outside that pocket, there was $36 in $1 bills, $50 in $5 bills, and $3.96 in coins. In his right front pocket, there was $15 in $1 bills, $50 in $5 bills, and 35 cents in coins. Next to his left leg on the ground, police later found a MasterCard and a Visa credit card. Money was also found lying between his left hip and his knee. Robert took cash from Mr. Kite. He did not take the credit cards. He left them on the ground. After taking the money, Robert ran away from the store. He ran back toward the pasture where his car was parked. The ground was wet because it had rained that afternoon. His shoes left prints in the mud. The shoes he was wearing were Nike tennis shoes. The tread on the shoes was unusual. As he ran, his pants' legs were too long, so they dragged on the ground and left marks next to his footprints. The stride of his prints going away from the store was longer than the stride of prints coming toward the store. This showed he was running away. While Robert was running back, Cynthia Howard heard 4 gunshots. She heard them 30 to 45 minutes after she saw the car lights in the pasture. Robert reached the car where Richardson was waiting. Robert did not have the wig or mask anymore. He got into the passenger seat. He told Richardson to drive. As Richardson drove, Robert told him to stop the car. Robert got out and left his clothes in some bushes. Then he got back in the car. Robert told Richardson, "I messed up. I killed him." Richardson drove to his own house. Once inside, Robert counted the money he had taken. He gave $80 to Richardson. Then Robert took the gun and stuck it inside the arm of the couch in Richardson's house. The gun was empty now. It had fired 3 shots. 1 bullet had gone through Mr. Kite's body and was not found. The other 2 bullets stayed inside Mr. Kite's body. Later that night, Robert and Richardson went to Mary's lounge. They stayed there until early morning. After the lounge closed, Richardson went to a man's house. Robert went to see a girlfriend. The next day, September 16th, 1984, a man named Joe Edwards went to the pasture behind Kite's store. He found a Budweiser beer can on the ground next to the tire tracks. He picked up the can and poured out the beer inside. The beer foamed when he poured it. This meant the beer was fresh and had been left there recently. The tire tracks in the pasture showed that a car had driven in, backed up, and then left at a high rate of speed. The tracks showed all 4 tires. Each tire had a different tread design because the tires on Robert's Chevrolet were all different from each other. The shoe prints in the mud led from the back of the store to the pasture. The shoe prints had a distinctive tread design that matched the Nike tennis shoes Robert had been wearing. That same day, Robert, Richardson, and another man named Bossy Edmonds drove to Brundage, Alabama. They went to Robert's mother's house. Robert stayed there. Richardson and Edmonds drove back home. Before Robert got out of the car, he gave Edmonds a $20 bill. Edmonds saw that Robert had more folded money in his hand. About a week later, Robert came back from Brundage. He went to Richardson's house. Robert asked Richardson if he had gotten rid of the gun. Richardson said no. So Robert and Richardson went together to Esther Dennis's house. Robert returned the Colt revolver to her. It was still unloaded. Dennis did not know that the gun had been used to kill a man. After returning the gun, Robert and Richardson drove home. On the way, Robert told Richardson, "If you say anything about this, you will end up the same way." The victim, Hugh Sims Kite, was found behind his store by a customer named Benny Davis. Davis had stopped at the store and found no one inside. The 10-year-old boy told Davis he had heard shots. Davis got a flashlight and went behind the store. He found Mr. Kite lying on the ground. Davis called the police. That was how the crime happened. Robert Lee Tarver Jr. shot Hugh Sims Kite 3 times, took his money, and ran away. His friend Andrew Richardson was with him before and after the shooting. The gun was returned to its owner. The beer can and the tire tracks and the shoe prints were left at the scene, and the victim was dead behind his own store. After Benny Davis found Hugh Kite's body behind the store, he called the police. Deputy Solly Pate arrived at the scene around 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time. He checked for a pulse on the victim. There was no pulse. Deputy Pate secured the area so no one could disturb the evidence. He called for an ambulance, the coroner, and the investigators. The coroner, Leslie Vance, came to the scene. He examined the body. He found 3 gunshot wounds. He declared that Hugh Kite was dead. The body was taken away. Investigator Raymond Smith from the Russell County Sheriff's Department took photographs of the scene and the body. He searched the victim's pockets. In the right front pocket, he found folded paper, coins, keys, medication, and a pocket knife. In the left front pocket, he found change and keys. The left front pocket was pulled inside out. Both back pockets were empty. A wallet was missing. Next to the victim's left leg, Smith found a MasterCard and a Visa card. Between the victim's left hip and knee, he found some money on the ground. Smith looked at the ground. He saw shoe prints in the mud. The prints had a distinctive tread design. They led away from the store toward the south. They crossed the railroad tracks and went into a pasture on a dirt road. Smith followed the prints. In the pasture, he found scratch marks in the dirt where a vehicle had left at high speed. He found tire prints from all 4 tires. The tires were all different from each other. He also found a fresh Salem cigarette, but in the grass where the vehicle had been parked. On September 16, 1984, Officer Joe Edwards found a Budweiser beer next to the tire tracks. He poured out the beer. It foamed, meaning it was fresh. For several weeks, investigators tried to match the tire prints and shoe prints. They checked tires on vehicles in the area. They checked shoes in stores. They found no matches. On October 11, 1984, a man named Robert Jackson gave information to Chief Investigator Thomas Boswell. Based on that information, Boswell asked investigator Herbert Parker to find Andrew Richardson. Parker found Richardson. Richardson came to the sheriff's office and made a statement. After his statement, Richardson was arrested for the murder of Hugh Kite. Boswell then went to the home of Esther Dennis. He asked her about a gun. Richardson was with Boswell. Richardson said something to Dennis. After that, Dennis produced a Colt single-shot revolver. It was unloaded. Boswell took the gun. Boswell then went to the home of Addie Upshaw, Robert Tarver's grandmother. There, he found a Chevrolet automobile. The tires on this car were all different. Boswell had the car impounded and towed to the jail yard. He searched Upshaw's home. He found a pair of Nike tennis shoes. The tread on the shoes looked similar to the shoe prints from the crime scene. Boswell took the car to a lab. He compared the tire tracks from the pasture with the tires on Tarver's car. The tread design and wear matched. He also sent the Budweiser beer to a fingerprint expert. Gloria Walters, a latent print examiner, lifted a fingerprint from the can. The print matched the right thumb of Robert Lee Tarver, Jr. The gun was sent to a firearms examiner named Lonnie Hardin. Hardin test-fired the gun. He compared the test bullets to the 2 bullets removed from the victim's body during the autopsy. He determined that both bullets had been fired through that same gun. On October 12, 1984, investigator Parker interviewed Robert Tarver. Parker told Tarver he was investigating the murder. Parker read Tarver his rights. Tarver signed a paper saying he understood his rights and would talk. Tarver told Parker he was nowhere near Cottonton that night. He said he was at Mary's Lounge playing pool with Richardson from 7 p.m. until 3 a.m. When Parker told Tarver that they had talked to Richardson, Tarver became very nervous. Parker then charged Tarver with murder. Robert Tarver was arrested and put in the Russell County Jail. While in jail, he had a bullet in his possession. Later, that bullet was released to his Aunt Deborah Upshaw. But the bullet she brought to court was a rifle bullet, not a revolver bullet. The police had seen a revolver bullet at the jail. In 1985, Robert Lee Tarver, Jr. went to trial in Russell County Circuit Court. The judge was Wayne Johnson. The prosecutor was District Attorney Kenneth Davis. Tarver had a lawyer. The jury was selected. Tarver was a black man. The victim was a white man. Russell County was 40% black. During jury selection, 13 out of 14 qualified black people were removed from the jury. The jury that heard the case was mostly white. At trial, Andrew Richardson testified against Tarver. Richardson said he was with Tarver that night. He told the jury everything Tarver did: the disguise, the drive to the pasture, the shooting, the $80, and the threat. Richardson admitted he had been indicted for the same murder. He said he was not promised anything for his testimony. He had pleaded guilty to a lesser charge of first-degree robbery. He received a 25-year prison sentence. Other witnesses testified. The boy Jerry Ford told what he heard. The camper Cynthia Howard told about the car lights and gunshots. The investigators showed the tire matches, the fingerprint match, and the gun match. Robert Jackson testified that Richardson told him what happened. Robert Tarver took the stand in his own defense. He said he was not near the store that night. He denied killing Hugh Kite. He said Richardson borrowed his car and his gun. He said Richardson came back and told him he had shot somebody. He said he wiped the gun and hid it. The jury did not believe him. The jury found Robert Tarver guilty of murder during a robbery. Under Alabama law, that crime carried a possible death sentence. The same jury then heard evidence about whether Tarver should get life in prison or death. The jury voted. The vote was 7-5 in favor of life in prison without parole. The jury recommended a life sentence. But Judge Wayne Johnson had the power to override the jury's recommendation. He decided that the aggravating circumstances, the crime was committed during a robbery, and Tarver was on parole for a previous robbery at the time, outweighed any mitigating circumstances. Judge Johnson sentenced Robert Tarver to death. Tarver appealed his case. The Alabama Court of Criminal Appeals reviewed the case in 1986. The court upheld the conviction and death sentence. Tarver continued to appeal for years. He claimed the electric chair was cruel and unusual punishment. He claimed black people were unfairly excluded from his jury. In 2000, former Assistant District Attorney Mark Carter signed an affidavit saying race was a factor in jury selection. But Carter admitted he had no specific memory of Tarver's trial. The courts rejected the claim, saying it was not new evidence. Tarver was scheduled to be executed on February 4, 2000. With less than 3 hours to go, the U.S. Supreme Court granted a stay. The stay gave the justices time to consider whether to hear Tarver's appeal about the electric chair. On February 22, 2000, the Supreme Court voted 5-4 not to hear the case. The state then set a new execution date. On April 14, 2000, Robert Lee Tarver Jr. was executed at Holman Prison near Atmore, Alabama. He was 52 years old. He did not eat a final meal. He spent the day visiting with family and a chaplain. He left his watch to his son. He left his personal papers to his sister. He did not show any remorse. He was strapped into the electric chair. He looked at the victim's children twice, but did not speak to them. He was pronounced dead at 12:11 a.m. The victim's family watched. Hugh Kite Jr. watched solemnly. His sister Cody Kite Holmes stood out of sight. They did not speak to reporters. Andrew Lee Richardson served his 25-year sentence. He became eligible for parole in April 2001. The community changed after Hugh Kite's death. Other store owners became afraid. They made sure they were never alone when opening or closing their stores. Kite's grocery and bait store, which had been a gathering place for everyone in Cottonton, was never the same. Robert Lee Tarver Jr. died in the electric chair for the robbery and murder of Hugh Sims Kite, and the case was closed. Story 2. Robert Glencoe was born on April 15, 1956, in Hickman, Kentucky. His parents were poor. The family moved often and lived in several small towns in northwest Tennessee. They usually lived in farm shacks that did not have running water. Robert had 3 brothers and 1 sister. Their names were Roger, Jimmy, Bonnie, and Billie Jean. The family did not have much money. They struggled to get enough food and clothing. Robert's father was named Willie Coe. Willie Coe was a violent man. He often beat his children. He also sexually abused his daughters. Sometimes he made Robert watch while he abused the girls. Robert's father also hit Robert in the head with a claw hammer. This caused injuries to Robert's head. Because of the abuse, the family had visits from welfare workers. People from Child Protection Services came to their home. But the workers never helped the children. The family stayed in the same bad situation. Robert grew up with mental problems. He had trouble thinking clearly. He acted in strange ways. As a young man, he started to do something called flashing. This meant he would expose his private parts to strangers in public. He did this many times. He was arrested repeatedly for this behavior. Some of the towns where he flashed people included Tiptonville, South Fulton, Martin, Paris, Union City, Greenfield, Sharon, Gleason, Dresden, Mackenzie, Henry, Lexington, Obion, Troy, Jackson, and Sambug. Robert also used drugs and alcohol. He started taking drugs when he was young. The drugs made his mental problems worse. He could not control his urges. Because of his strange behavior and his mental illness, Robert was sent to mental hospitals 4 times before he turned 23 years old. One of those times happened in Florida. In Florida, he tried to rape and stab a woman. A judge said Robert was not mentally able to stand trial for that crime. So instead of going to prison, he was sent to a mental hospital. Doctors there said he had an explosive personality disorder. They gave him a drug called Thorazine to calm him down. After some time, the hospital released him. Robert went back to Tennessee. He found work as a part-time auto mechanic. He worked at a body shop in Mackenzie, Tennessee. He also got married. His wife's name was not widely reported. They had a baby daughter together. The daughter was born about 9 months before Robert's arrest for a later crime. The court later changed the daughter's name to protect her identity. Robert's mental illness did not go away. He still had trouble controlling his actions. He still had the urge to flash at people. He still took drugs. His marriage was not stable. His wife and baby often stayed with her sister in Dresden, Tennessee, while Robert worked in Mackenzie. By the summer of 1979, Robert Glenn Coe was 23 years old. He had a long history of family abuse, drug abuse, public flashing arrests, and stays in mental hospitals. He was living a troubled life. He could not hold a steady job for long. He could not stay out of trouble. His mind was not well. But he had not yet committed the crime that would make him famous. On Saturday, September 1st, 1979, Robert Glenn Coe went to work at the Carroll County Collision Body Shop in Mackenzie, Tennessee. His boss sent him out to get some car parts. Coe drove his boss's old truck to the town of Paris. While in Paris, he tried to find someone to flash at. He did not see anyone, so he returned to work. After work, Coe got into his own car. He drove toward Dresden, where his wife and baby were staying with his sister-in-law. The normal road to Dresden was blocked because a bridge was out, so Coe had to drive through the town of Greenfield, Tennessee. While driving through Greenfield, Coe started looking for someone to flash at again. He drove around the town. He pulled into a church parking lot and parked. That is when he saw 2 children riding bicycles. One was a girl. The other was a boy. The girl was Carrie Ann Medlin. She was 8 years old. She had brown hair and brown eyes. She was wearing a pink shirt and shorts. She was riding her bicycle with her stepbrother, Michael Stout, who was also 8 years old. They had just visited Michael's grandmother, Margaret Stout, who lived on Evergreen Street. The children were on their way back home. Coe pulled out of the church parking lot and followed the children. He lost sight of them for a moment. Then he drove around the block and found them again. He pulled his car next to them and started talking to the girl. He asked her where her daddy was. She said her daddy was at home. Ko told her that he had not seen her daddy for a while. He asked her to show him where her daddy lived. Carrie believed him. She thought he was a friend of her father. Ko told her to leave her bicycle at the church. Carrie told Michael to watch her bike. Then she got into Ko's car. The car was a 1972 Ford Torino. It was 4 doors. The color was brown over grayish-brown. Carrie sat in the front seat. Ko drove away from the church. He turned left and drove around some streets. Carrie asked him where he was going. He told her they were going for a ride. She hung her head down and did not say anything else. Ko drove around looking for a place to stop. He went up a gravel road to a ballpark, but there were cars parked there, so he turned around. He kept driving on other roads. Finally, he found a gravel road that was lonely and deserted. The road was well hidden by trees. There were fence rows on each side. No one could see what happened there. Ko stopped the car. He got out and walked around to Carrie Ann's side. He opened her door. He exposed himself to her. He touched her body. Then he got on top of her and raped her. He also sexually assaulted her anally. The medical examiner later found bruises and tears in both her vaginal and anal areas. Sperm was found on swabs taken from her body. When Ko finished his sex act, he told Carrie to shut up. Instead of staying quiet, the little girl looked at him and said, "Jesus loves you. Jesus loves you." Those words made Ko very upset. He decided to kill her. First, Ko tried to choke her to death with his hands. He grabbed her around the neck and squeezed. Her face turned blue, but she did not die. So Ko made her walk backward down the road into the weeds. He pushed her and kept choking her as they walked. Then Ko stopped. He told Carrie to shut her eyes. He took out his pocket knife. He opened the blade. He grabbed her by the hair on her head and pulled her head back. He stabbed her once in the neck. He pushed her down on the ground. After she fell, Carrie asked him if he was going to kill her. Then she started jerking and grabbing at her shirt near her neck. Ko stood there and watched the blood come out of her neck. He later said the blood came out like turning on a water hose. She struggled and jerked for a while. Then she stopped moving. Ko got some blood on his hands. He pulled leaves off bushes and wiped the blood off with the leaves. Then he ran back to his car. He pulled out of the gravel road onto the paved road. He still had the knife in his hand. When he hit some bumps in the road, the blade stuck into his own finger. He pulled onto Highway 45 and turned right toward the town of Martin. A large truck came toward him. The truck had to swerve to avoid hitting him. After the truck passed, Ko threw the knife out of the window into a bean field. Ko drove to Martin. Then he went to Dresden to his sister-in-law Vicky Box's house. His wife was not there, so he started driving back to Mackenzie to find his wife. As he drove past a nursing home in Dresden, he threw his flip-flop sandals out of the car window. He was worried about footprints he had left at the scene where he killed the girl. He went to Mackenzie and got another pair of shoes. Then he came back to Dresden, where his wife was at her sister's house. That night, Ko arrived at the Box home around 7:45 or 8 p.m. He was nervous. He was not drunk or high on drugs, but something was on his mind. He told his brother-in-law, Donald Box, "Donnie, I would be better off dead." On Sunday, September 2nd, 1979, searchers found Carrie Medlin's body. The body was discovered around 2 p.m. in a dense thicket beside the gravel road, about 2 miles from Greenfield. The medical examiner later performed an autopsy. He found evidence of manual strangulation. He found a stab wound to the neck that cut the carotid artery and the jugular vein. Either of those wounds could have caused death. The examiner said both the strangulation and the stabbing happened while Carrie was alive. She lived for a short time after the wounds were inflicted, and then she died. Meanwhile, Ko and his wife and baby spent Sunday night and Monday night with friends named Janet and Daryl Ross. The Rosses lived in the Big Buck community, about 10 miles from Mackenzie. On Sunday night, Coe told them he was in trouble with the law. He said he and his cousin had gone to Camden to get marijuana and LSD. He said his cousin shot a state trooper. He said he had stabbed a trooper in the throat. On Monday, September 3rd, 1979, which was Labor Day, Coe asked Janet Ross and his wife to buy hair dye. They bought black hair dye. That night, they dyed Coe's hair black. His natural hair color was dirty blonde, and it was shoulder length. On Tuesday morning, September 4th, 1979, Coe went to Crestview Motors, a used car dealership in Gleason, Tennessee. He had bought the Ford Torino from them in June 1979. Now he traded that car for a 1972 blue Mustang. The owner's wife, Althea Jones, did the paperwork. She noticed that Coe's hair had been dyed black. She saw black smudge marks on his forehead. The dye job looked sloppy. Later that same morning, Barry Jones, the owner of Crestview Motors, left the lot. The chief of police of Gleason came by and asked if they had traded cars with anyone. Althea Jones told him about Coe. She showed him the Ford Torino. The police chief made a phone call. Then he asked her to lock up the car and not show it to anyone except law officers. Soon after, many law officers came to look at the car. A woman and a little boy also came. The officers showed them the Ford Torino. The woman was Margaret Stout, Carrie Ann's step-grandmother. The little boy was Michael Stout, Carrie Ann's stepbrother. That same Tuesday, Coe went to the bus station in Huntingdon, Tennessee. He bought a bus ticket to Marietta, Georgia. He put identification tags on his baggage. The name on the tags was James Watson. Darrell Ross was with him. On Tuesday, September 4th, 1979, after Coe bought his bus ticket, Darrell Ross drove him back to the bus station in Huntingdon so he could leave for Georgia. But before Coe could board the bus, police officers arrived and arrested him. They took him to the Weakley County Jail in Dresden. When Coe arrived at the jail, a hostile crowd was outside. People were screaming at him and yelling threats. Inside the jail, Coe asked to speak privately with Alvin Daniel, an agent with the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation. Daniel and another officer, Inspector Blackwell, had driven Coe from Huntingdon to the jail. When Coe and Daniel were alone, Coe said, "I did it." Daniel asked, "You did what, Robert?" Coe replied, "I am the one that killed that little girl." Daniel then read Coe his rights again. Coe agreed to talk on tape. The questioning started at 7:49 p.m. that night. Coe gave a full confession. He described how he lured Carrie Ann into his car, drove her to a gravel road, raped her, choked her, and stabbed her with his pocket knife. He also said that before he killed her, she told him, "Jesus loves you." The next day, September 5th, 1979, Daniel and Blackwell went back to the jail. They read Coe his rights again. Coe agreed to take them on a drive and show them what he had done. He directed the officers to the church in Greenfield where Carrie and got into his car. Then he showed them the route he took to the gravel lane off Bean Switch Road. Along the way, Coe pointed to a house. He said an old man sitting on the porch would remember seeing his car that day with the little girl inside. That man was Herbert Clements, age 85. He later testified that he saw a car drive by that afternoon, and that he recognized the little girl passenger as Carrie Ann. Police also found other evidence. A forensic serologist tested swabs taken from Carrie Ann's body. The tests showed the presence of spermatozoa from both the vaginal and anal areas. Fecal material was found underneath the foreskin of Coe's penis. Stains on the inside of Coe's pants matched stains found on Carrie Ann's underpants. Coe's trial was moved from Weakley County to Shelby County because of all the news coverage. The trial took place in early 1981. The jury heard Coe's confession. They heard from Michael Stout, who identified Coe as the man in the car. They heard from Margaret Stout, who identified Coe's Ford Torino as the car she saw outside her house. They heard from the medical examiner about the injuries to Carrie, and Coe's lawyers argued that he was insane. They presented evidence about his abusive childhood and his mental health history. But several experts testified that Coe was not legally insane at the time of the murder. In May 1981, the jury found Coe guilty of first-degree murder, aggravated rape, and aggravated kidnapping. For the murder, he was sentenced to death. For the rape and kidnapping, he received 2 life sentences. Coe then began a long series of appeals. In 1983, the Tennessee Supreme Court affirmed the judgment. In 1984, the U.S. Supreme Court refused to review the case. Coe filed more appeals over the next several years. In 1996, U.S. District Judge John Nixon threw out Coe's conviction and death sentence. Nixon said the trial judge had given the jury improper instructions. But in 1998, a 3-judge panel of the 6th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals reversed Nixon's ruling. They reinstated Coe's conviction and death sentence. In 1999, the Tennessee Supreme Court denied another appeal. The U.S. Supreme Court gave permission for Coe to be executed, but more delays followed. Coe's lawyers argued that he was mentally incompetent to be executed. A Memphis judge held a hearing in January 2000. Coe acted strangely in court. He spat at a prosecutor and threatened the judge. The judge ruled that Coe understood why he was facing execution. Therefore, he was competent to be put to death. An execution date was set for March 23, 2000. But federal courts granted stays of execution twice, each time within hours of the scheduled death. Finally, a new date was set for April 19, 2000. On April 18, 2000, Coe was moved to a death watch cell at Riverbend Maximum Security Institution in Nashville. He was allowed to say goodbye to his family. That evening, he ate his last meal: fried catfish, white beans, hush puppies, coleslaw, French fries, pecan pie, and sweet tea. Around 9:30 p.m., a judge temporarily halted the execution, saying there were questions about the lethal injection procedures. But the Tennessee Supreme Court overturned that ruling less than 30 minutes before the execution was set to begin. The U.S. Supreme Court also gave its approval. Just before 1 a.m. on April 19, 2000, Coe was strapped to a gurney and wheeled into the execution chamber. Catheters were inserted into both his arms. He was given a chance to make a final statement. He said, "God loves you, I'm gone." He also made an "I love you" sign with his right hand for a family member who was deaf. At 1 a.m., the warden gave the order. The executioner began the flow of 3 chemicals: sodium pentothal to make Coe unconscious, pancuronium bromide to stop his breathing, and potassium chloride to stop his heart. At 1:37 a.m., Robert Glenn Coe was pronounced dead. Carrie and Medlin's mother, Charlotte Stout, and her stepfather, Mickey Stout, witnessed the execution. Afterward, Charlotte Stout said, "He chose his path." Coe's siblings also witnessed the execution. They said later that they still believed he was innocent of killing Carrie Ann. The state of Tennessee had carried out its first execution in 40 years. Robert Glenn Coe was the 627th person executed in the United States since the death penalty was reinstated in 1976. Carrie Ann Medlin was remembered by her family as a cheerful, loving child who told her killer that Jesus loved him. A scholarship was created in her name at Greenfield High School. Her mother finally closed the chapter on 21 years of waiting for justice. The case of Robert Glenn Coe ended on April 19, 2000, when he became the first person executed by lethal injection in Tennessee, and Carrie Ann Medlin's family was finally able to bury their grief without the shadow of an ongoing appeal hanging over them. Story 3. Ronald Keith Boyd was born on March 6, 1957. He was born in the United States. His family was African American. He grew up in a neighborhood in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. His parents worked to take care of him and his siblings. Not much is publicly known about his very early childhood years, but records show that as a young man, he began to have problems with the law. When Ronald was a teenager, he started getting into trouble. He did not finish a long education. He did not go to college. Instead, he spent time with friends who also broke the law. By the time he was in his early 20s, he had already been arrested for crimes. He went to jail for some of those crimes. Being locked up became a normal part of his life. Ronald did not keep a steady job. He did not have a legal career. Instead, he moved between different places to stay. He sometimes lived with friends. He did not have a wife or children that public records show. His social life was built around people who also committed crimes. He knew other men and women who would rob stores or steal things. In the years before 1986, Ronald had been in and out of jail. He did not like being arrested. He did not want to go back to prison. This fear of being locked up again would stay with him. He talked to friends about not wanting to be caught by police. He had a habit of carrying a weapon. He was not afraid to use force if he felt trapped. Ronald also had a habit of blaming others for his own actions. When he was caught for smaller crimes before 1986, he would sometimes say someone else did it. He would say he was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. This pattern of lying to avoid punishment started years before the main event. But he was not always believed. He still served time in jail for past crimes. By January 1986, Ronald Keith Boyd was 28 years old. He had been arrested before. He had been in prison before. He did not have a job. He did not have a stable home. He spent his time riding around the city with friends who also broke the law. He carried a gun. He did not trust police. He said he would do almost anything to avoid going back to jail. That was the life Ronald Boyd had built for himself by the start of 1986. He was a man with a criminal past, no steady work, and a deep fear of being arrested again. He had friends who robbed stores. He had a gun, and he was about to be in a place where all of these things would come together. On the evening of January 7th, 1986, Ronald Boyd was riding around Oklahoma City with 3 other people. Their names were Byron Gibbs, Joe Jackson, and Lenora Denise Dunn. They were all in a green van. Byron Gibbs was driving the van. They had been driving for several hours with no clear plan. Then Ronald Boyd told Gibbs to stop at a store. The store was called Tom's Market. It was located at 1000 Northeast 36th Street in Oklahoma City. Gibbs stopped the van near the store. Joe Jackson got out first. He walked to a payphone outside the store. He pretended to make a phone call. Lenora Dunn stayed in the van for a moment. Ronald Boyd talked to her. He asked her if she wanted to rob the store. Then he handed her a handgun. It was a .38 caliber revolver. Dunn took the gun. She got out of the van and walked into Tom's Market. Inside the store, a woman named Dorothy Trimble was working as the clerk. She was behind the counter. Lenora Dunn pointed the gun at Dorothy Trimble. Dunn demanded money. Trimble was scared. She gave Dunn money from the cash register. Dunn took the money and walked out of the store. She got back into the green van. The robbery took only a few minutes. After the robbery, Dorothy Trimble called the police. She told them a black woman with a gun had robbed the store. She also said the woman left in a green van. The police wrote down this information. They started looking for the green van. Meanwhile, the group in the van drove away from Tom's Market. They went east on 36th Street. They reached Interstate 35. There was a Phillips 66 gas station near the highway. Ronald Boyd told Gibbs to pull into the gas station. Boyd said he needed to use the pay phone. Gibbs stopped the van near the pay phones. The van was now parked at the gas station. Ronald Boyd got out of the van. He walked to the pay phone. He picked up the receiver and pretended to make a call. He did not actually call anyone for a real reason. He was just standing there. Lenora Dunn, Joe Jackson, and Byron Gibbs stayed inside the van. They waited. At the same time, Two Oklahoma City police officers were driving nearby. Their names were Richard Riggs and Craig Gravel. Officer Riggs was 32 years old. He was a master patrolman. Officer Gravel was his partner. He was a rookie, which meant he was new to the job. The two officers had heard the radio report about the robbery at Tom's Market. They were looking for a green van. As they drove on 36th Street, they saw a green van parked at the Phillips 66 gas station. The van matched the description from the robbery. Officer Riggs decided to investigate. He pulled the police car behind the van. The car stopped. Both officers got out. Officer Gravel walked toward the back of the van. He looked inside. He saw a woman and two men sitting in the van. That was Lenora Dunn, Joe Jackson, and Byron Gibbs. Officer Gravel stayed near the rear of the van. He watched them. Officer Riggs walked toward the pay phone. He saw Ronald Boyd standing there with the phone receiver in his hand. Officer Riggs told Boyd to get off the phone. Then he told Boyd to walk toward him. Boyd did not move right away. Officer Riggs gave the command a second time. Boyd dropped the phone receiver. He started walking toward Officer Riggs, but Boyd kept both of his hands hidden inside the pockets of his coat. Officer Riggs saw this. He told Boyd to take his hands out of his pockets. Boyd did not obey. Instead, with his hands still inside his coat pockets, Boyd pulled the trigger of the gun he had hidden in his pocket. The gun fired once. The bullet hit Officer Riggs in the abdomen, which is the area of the stomach and lower belly. Officer Riggs was wounded but still standing. Boyd did not stop. He walked closer to Officer Riggs. He took the gun out of his pocket. He placed the gun directly against Officer Riggs's chest. Then he pulled the trigger a second time. This second shot was fired at very close range. The bullet went into the officer's chest. Officer Riggs fell to the ground. Even though he was badly hurt, Officer Riggs did not give up. He pulled his own gun. He fired back toward the van. Officer Gravel also started shooting. Officer Gravel had run to hide behind some gas pumps when he saw Boyd approaching. From there, he fired his gun as well. Both officers shot in the direction of the van. After shooting Officer Riggs, Ronald Boyd turned and walked toward the back of the van. Officer Gravel saw him coming. Gravel ran away to protect himself. Boyd then moved to the front of the van. He used the van as cover to hide from the gunfire. The van started to roll slowly out of the gas station parking lot. It crossed 36th Street. It kept going until it hit a fence. The van stopped there. Police later arrived at the scene. Inside the van, they found three people: Lenora Dunn, Joe Jackson, and Byron Gibbs. They arrested all three at the scene, but Ronald Boyd was not in the van. He had run away on foot. He escaped into the night. The gun that Boyd used was later found by police. It was discovered on January 10th, 1986, in a ravine at the Twin Hills Country Club. The location was near where the shooting happened. Part of the gun's grip was broken off. Police had already found a piece of the broken grip at the shooting scene. That piece matched the gun. The gun had fired only 2 shots. It stopped working after the second shot because a bullet had hit the gun and damaged it. Officer Richard Riggs was taken to a hospital. His injuries were too severe. He died from the 2 gunshot wounds. He left behind his mother, Betty Riggs, and other family members. He was only 32 years old. After the shooting, Ronald Boyd ran to a house he shared with a man named Fred Tubbs. He stayed there for a short time, but police helicopters and patrol cars came near the house. Boyd saw them. He ran away again. He went to another house. This house belonged to a man named Reginald Walker. Boyd told Walker that he had shot a police officer. Boyd said he blanked out, and the gun just went off. He also said he ran because he had just gotten out of jail and did not want to be arrested again. He asked Walker to help him leave town. A passing motorist had seen the shooting at the gas station. That motorist later told police that he saw the man on the pay phone fire a gun at the police officer. That witness would remember what he saw. At the time of the shooting, no one was arrested for the murder yet. Ronald Boyd was still free. But the police now knew his name. They knew he was the gunman. They began searching for him. The day after the shooting, police continued searching for Ronald Boyd. They received a tip about where he was hiding. Someone told them Boyd was at the home of Reginald Walker. On January 8, 1986, police went to Walker's house. They found Boyd there. They arrested him without further violence. He had been free for about 19 hours. After the arrest, police took Boyd to a hospital. They wanted to check his hands for injuries. A doctor named Dr. Balding examined Boyd. The doctor applied a liquid to Boyd's hands and fingers. This was a test to see if Boyd had recently fired a gun. The doctor saw that the test gave a negative result. That meant the test did not show gunpowder residue on Boyd's hands. The doctor told the police officers in the room that Boyd had not fired a gun. But one of the detectives told the doctor to sign the paperwork anyway. The doctor signed. The prosecution later argued that Boyd had washed his hands before the test. Because he was arrested a full day after the shooting, he had plenty of time to clean himself. They said the negative test result did not prove he was innocent. Police also questioned the other 3 people who were in the van. Joe Jackson told police that Ronald Boyd was the gunman. Jackson said he saw Boyd turn toward Officer Riggs and fire 2 shots. Lenora Dunn agreed to cooperate with prosecutors. She pleaded guilty to the armed robbery of Tom's Market. She also pleaded guilty to a separate knife attack from 1984 and a larceny from 1985. In exchange, the first-degree murder charge against her was dropped. She was sentenced to 40 years in prison. Byron Gibbs took a polygraph test, which is a lie detector test. He passed the test. Because of that, prosecutors dropped the first-degree murder charges against him. Joe Jackson had his charge dismissed by a judge. The judge said there was not enough evidence to hold Jackson, so only Ronald Boyd was charged with first-degree murder. The trial began on September 4, 1986. The judge was James L. Gullett. The prosecutor was District Attorney Robert Macy. Boyd's lawyer was Senator E. Melvin Porter. The jury was made up of ordinary citizens. During the trial, the prosecution called several witnesses. Officer Craig Gravel, Riggs's partner, testified. He said he heard 2 shots after Officer Riggs told Boyd to take his hands out of his pockets. The passing motorist who saw the shooting also testified. He said he saw the man on the pay-phone fire at the police officer. A gun expert named Sergeant Roy Golightly testified. He matched the spent bullet casings found near the gun with the bullets removed from Officer Riggs's body. He proved that only 2 shots were fired from that gun. Boyd's lawyer argued that there was no proof Boyd acted with malice. Malice means planning to kill or having a wicked heart. The lawyer also said Boyd did not commit the robbery. But the prosecution showed that Boyd handed the gun to Lenora Dunn before the robbery. That made him part of the robbery, even if he did not go inside the store. Boyd did not testify in his own defense. His lawyer had recommended that he testify, but Boyd chose not to. Later, Boyd claimed that a hitchhiker had taken the gun from his knapsack and shot Officer Riggs. He also said the doctor's test proved he had not fired a gun. But he did not say these things during the trial. He only said them years later. The jury found Ronald Boyd guilty of first-degree malice aforethought murder. They also found him guilty of robbery with firearms. For the murder, the jury had to decide between life in prison or the death penalty. They considered 3 aggravating circumstances, which are facts that make a crime worse. The jury found all 3 applied. They recommended the death penalty. For the robbery, they recommended 50 years in prison. The judge agreed with the jury. Boyd was sentenced to death. After the trial, Boyd appealed his case. An appeal is when a convicted person asks a higher court to review the case for mistakes. The Oklahoma Court of Criminal Appeals heard his direct appeal in 1992. They affirmed the conviction and sentence, which means they agreed with the lower court. Boyd filed more appeals over the years. In 1996, the same court denied his request for post-conviction relief. He then took his case to federal court. In 1999, the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals denied his habeas corpus petition. That meant all his legal challenges had failed. On March 20, 2000, Boyd had a clemency hearing before the Oklahoma Pardon and Parole Board. Clemency is when a governor or board reduces a sentence or grants mercy. Boyd told the board he was innocent. He said a hitchhiker shot Officer Riggs. He also said there was no gunpowder residue on his hands. The board did not believe him. They denied his appeal for clemency. On April 26, 2000, the day before the execution, people gathered outside the prison. More than 80 people held a prayer vigil. They opposed the death penalty. At the same time, Oklahoma City police officers gathered to support the execution. Betty Riggs, the mother of Officer Riggs, spoke to reporters. She held the last picture taken of her son. She said, "I promised Richard as I stood over his coffin that I would live to see this day." That night, Ronald Boyd was given a last meal. He asked for catfish, French fries, plums, grapes, strawberry shortcake, and a cherry Sprite. He ate the meal. At 12:21 a.m. on April 27, 2000, Ronald Keith Boyd was executed by lethal injection at the Oklahoma State Penitentiary in McAlester. He was 43 years old. His last words were to his family. He said he loved them. He said he was at peace with God. Then the drugs were given. He took several big breaths. His eyes closed halfway. He was pronounced dead. After the execution, Officer Richard Riggs's family knew that the man who killed him was gone. Betty Riggs kept her promise to her son. The other 3 people in the van all served time, but were not executed. Lenora Dunn was sentenced to 40 years. Byron Gibbs and Joe Jackson were not charged with murder. The case was closed. Ronald Keith Boyd became the 628th person executed in the United States since 1976, the 24th person executed in Oklahoma since 1976, and the 5th person executed in Oklahoma in the year 2000. He was buried. Officer Richard Oldham Riggs remained remembered as a master patrolman who died doing his job. The story of what happened on January 7, 1986, ended with Boyd's death on April 27, 2000. Story 4. Christina Marie Riggs was born on September 2, 1971, in Lawton, Oklahoma. She grew up mostly in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Her mother's name was Carol Thomas. Later, her mother worked as a food service worker at a hospital. When Christina was about 7 years old, a stepbrother started to sexually abuse her. This abuse continued until she was about 13 years old. When she was 13, a neighbor also abused her. These events caused her a lot of pain, but she kept most of her feelings inside. By the time she was 14, Christina began drinking alcohol. She also started smoking cigarettes and marijuana. She felt that boys did not like her because she was overweight. Because of this feeling, she became sexually active with many partners. She thought that being sexual was the only way to keep a boyfriend. At age 16, Christina became pregnant. In January 1988, she gave birth to a baby boy. She decided to give the baby up for adoption. She let the child go to another family. After high school, Christina trained to become a licensed practical nurse, or LPN. She got a job working part-time as a home care nurse. She also worked full-time at a Veterans Administration hospital. She was good at her nursing work. Christina dated several men over the years. One of them was a sailor. Another was a bar bouncer. Then she started a relationship with a man named Timothy Thompson. He was stationed at Tinker Air Force Base. In late October 1991, Christina learned she was pregnant again. She told Timothy Thompson about the baby the day before he left the military. At first, Thompson did not believe the baby was his. He moved back to his home state of Minnesota. Christina's mother later said that her daughter's luck with men was very bad. While Christina was still pregnant, she got back together with an old boyfriend. His name was John Riggs. He was a sailor who was home on leave. John Riggs felt the baby kick for the first time. He treated the baby as if it were his own. Christina felt happy about this. On June 7, 1992, Christina gave birth to a son. She named him Justin. She held him in her arms and looked at his little face. She felt very scared. She asked herself if she would be a good mother. She wondered if she could give him everything he needed. Justin's nickname became Bubby, which his little sister later gave him. John Riggs moved in with Christina, but their relationship had problems from the start. Christina became pregnant again. The couple married in July 1993. On her wedding night, Christina had a miscarriage. This was a bitter disappointment. The marriage started to fall apart. Christina became depressed and had thoughts of killing herself. Part of this depression came from birth control medication she was taking. A doctor gave her an antidepressant called Prozac. When she started to feel better, she stopped taking the drug. Her mother, Carol Thomas, said that Christina kept her feelings to herself most of the time. If her mother pushed hard, Christina might get mad and talk. But generally, she stayed quiet about her pain. In the spring of 1994, Christina became pregnant again. In December of that year, she gave birth to a daughter. She named the baby Shelby Alexis Riggs. The family called the child Sissy. Christina was very happy. She thought things could not get any better. John Riggs cried with joy. He looked at Shelby with so much love. In April 1995, a terrorist bomb destroyed the Murray Federal Building in Oklahoma City. Christina was working as a nurse at a hospital at that time. The hospital assigned her to work at a triage station near the blast site. She saw the damage and the victims. In the summer of 1995, Christina and John Riggs decided to move to Sherwood, Arkansas. Her mother was living there. They hoped the grandmother could help with daycare for the children. Christina got a job at Baptist Hospital, where her mother worked. Both children had health problems. Shelby had many serious ear infections. Justin had attention deficit disorder and hyperactivity, which made him hard to manage. Christina's marriage to John Riggs continued to fail. John Riggs punched Justin in the stomach so hard that the boy needed medical attention. After that, Christina divorced John Riggs. She moved back to Oklahoma City for a time. Justin was very hurt by what his father did. He would say, "My daddy hurt me, and then he went away." Christina's financial situation became worse. She worked long hours at a new job at the Arkansas Heart Hospital. She also worked for a temporary nursing agency, but her daycare bills kept going up. She wrote hot checks. Her car registration and insurance expired. She felt like she was sinking. Her mother, Carol Thomas, noticed something was wrong. She asked Christina what was happening. Christina would only say that she was tired and working too many hours. She did not tell her mother the full truth about how bad things had become. Christina Riggs felt like she was sinking deeper every day. She worked long shifts at the Arkansas Heart Hospital. She worked 12 hours at a time, but the money was not enough. She earned about $17,000 per year. Her daycare costs were high. The fathers of her children did not always send child support on time. Her car registration and insurance had expired. She had written hot checks and was threatened with jail time. She had even pawned her television and VCR to pay for Justin's birthday party. Christina began to think about suicide, but she did not want to die and leave her children behind. She did not want her children to be separated after her death. Justin and Shelby had different fathers. Christina believed the families would fight over custody. She also did not want her children to grow up knowing their mother killed herself. So she decided that if she died, her children would die with her. She believed this was an act of love. Christina thought about this plan for 2 or 3 weeks. She did not tell anyone what she was planning. She kept the idea inside her head. On November 4th, 1997, Christina went to work at the Arkansas Heart Hospital. This was her last day of work there. While at the hospital, she took drugs that she would need for her plan. She took a drug called Elavil, which is an antidepressant that also makes people sleepy. She took a painkiller called morphine. She also took a toxic drug called potassium chloride. Potassium chloride stops the heart from beating. It is the same drug used in lethal injections for prisoners on death row. She put these drugs in her pockets and brought them home. That same day, she cleaned out her checking account. She gave all the money she had to her mother, Carol Thomas. She did not tell her mother why. That evening, Christina was at her duplex home at 8015 Bronco Lane in Sherwood, Arkansas. She had her 2 children with her, Justin, age 5, and Shelby, age 2. She took the Elavil and mixed a small amount of it into water. She made the children drink the water. The Elavil made the children drowsy. They became sleepy. Christina then put each child into their own bed. She waited for them to fall asleep. At about 10 p.m., Christina went to Justin's bed. She took a syringe filled with undiluted potassium chloride. She injected the drug into Justin's neck. She thought the drug would stop his heart quickly and peacefully. But she did not know that potassium chloride must be diluted with water to work without pain. Undiluted potassium chloride causes severe burning and pain. Justin woke up. He cried out in terror and pain. He called, "Mama! Mama! Mama!" Christina tried to help him. She injected him with morphine to ease the pain. But the morphine did not work. Justin continued to cry and fight. Christina began crying too. She then took a pillow and placed it over Justin's face. She smothered him. Justin fought back as she held the pillow down. Eventually, he stopped moving. After Justin was dead, Christina went to Shelby's bed. She had seen the pain that the potassium chloride injection caused Justin. She decided not to inject Shelby. Instead, she took a pillow and placed it over Shelby's head. She suffocated her daughter. Shelby fought back a little bit, but not much. Soon, Shelby also stopped moving. The killings were finished by about 10:30 p.m. Christina then moved the bodies of both children. She placed them side by side on her own bed. She covered them with a blanket. She wrote suicide notes. She wrote a note to her mother, Carol Thomas. She wrote a note to her ex-husband, John Riggs. She also wrote a note to her sister, Rosanna Pickett. In the note to John Riggs, she wrote that she hoped he would forgive her for taking her own life and the lives of her children. She wrote that she could not live like that anymore. She said she could not bear to leave her children behind to be a burden or to be separated and raised apart from their fathers. After finishing the notes, Christina took 28 tablets of Elavil. This was normally a lethal dose. She then injected herself with enough undiluted potassium chloride to kill 5 people. She fell unconscious on the bedroom floor. The undiluted potassium chloride burned a hole in her arm about the size of a silver dollar as she lay there. The next day was November 5th, 1997. Christina Riggs did not show up for work. Her mother, Carol Thomas, became worried. Carol called her daughters home, but no one answered. So Carol drove to the duplex at 8015 Bronco Lane in Sherwood. She let herself into the house. Inside, Carol found the 2 children lying dead on Christina's bed. They were covered with a blanket. She found Christina lying unconscious on the bedroom floor. Carol believed her daughter was also dead. She turned around in circles and screamed. She called 911 on her cell phone and told the operator that her daughter and her babies were dead. Paramedics and police officers arrived at the house. They found the bodies of Justin and Shelby. They saw that the children had been dead for some time. The Pulaski County coroner, Mark Malcolm, later estimated that the children had been dead for 10 to 14 hours before they were discovered. The paramedics found Christina still barely alive. They took her to the Baptist Memorial Medical Center emergency room in North Little Rock. At the hospital, doctors pumped Christina's stomach. They gave her charcoal to absorb the remaining drugs in her stomach. They stabilized her condition. She was later moved to the intensive care unit. A police officer was placed outside her room to guard her. Meanwhile, Sherwood police officers searched Christina's home. They found the suicide notes on a nightstand. They found the bottle of Elavil, the morphine, the potassium chloride, and the used syringes. They also found the 2 dead children. The police had clear evidence that Christina had killed her children and then tried to kill herself. At the hospital, Christina's family members arrived. Her mother and sisters asked to see her, but the Sherwood Police Department instructed hospital staff and officers not to let anyone see her. The family hired a lawyer to represent Christina. The lawyer contacted the police and told them not to speak to Christina without the lawyer present. On the morning of November 6, 1997, 2 Sherwood police detectives, Charles Jones and Cheryl Williams, went to the hospital to question Christina. At 9:20 a.m., Detective Jones read Christina her Miranda rights. Christina said she understood her rights. She agreed to talk. The detectives recorded an 8-minute statement. In that statement, Christina admitted that she killed her children. She explained how she gave them Elavil, injected Justin with potassium chloride, smothered him with a pillow, and then smothered Shelby with a pillow. She said she had been thinking about doing this for 2 or 3 weeks. She said she felt out of control and could not take it anymore. At the end of the statement, she asked the detective if he came down the escalator by himself. There was no escalator in the hospital. This showed she was still confused. Later that morning, a doctor examined Christina and found her still suffering from the drug overdose. She was discharged from the hospital several hours later and taken to the Pulaski County Jail. She was charged with 2 counts of capital murder for the deaths of her children. Before her trial, Christina's lawyers asked the judge to throw out her hospital confession. They argued that she was still drugged and hallucinating when she gave the statement. They also argued that the police questioned her after her family had already hired a lawyer. The trial court held a hearing. Doctors and nurses gave conflicting testimony about how alert Christina was that morning. The judge listened to the tape recording of her statement. He ruled that the statement was voluntary and could be used at trial. Christina's trial took place in June 1998 at the Pulaski County Circuit Court. She pleaded not guilty by reason of mental disease or defect. Her defense did not argue that she was innocent. They admitted that she killed her children. Instead, they argued that she suffered from severe depression that made her unable to appreciate the criminality of her actions. They presented psychiatrists and psychologists who testified about her long history of depression, the sexual abuse she suffered as a child, and her belief that killing her children was an act of mercy. The prosecution, led by Pulaski County Prosecuting Attorney Larry Jegley, argued a different story. They said Christina killed her children because they were an inconvenience to her. They said she planned the murders for weeks. They presented the taped confession. They also presented physical evidence and testimony from witnesses who heard Christina admit to the killings. The prosecution argued that Christina was not insane. They said she was self-centered and manipulative. The jury heard all the evidence. On June 30, 1998, the jury of 7 women and 5 men took only 55 minutes to reach a verdict. They found Christina Riggs guilty of 2 counts of capital murder. When the verdict was read, Christina collapsed in the courtroom. The trial then moved to the penalty phase. The jury had to decide whether Christina would receive life in prison or the death penalty. During this phase, Christina told her lawyers that she did not want them to put on a defense. She said she wanted to die. She testified in front of the jury. She told them, "I want to die. I want to be with my babies. I want you to give me the death penalty." The jury listened to her request. They decided that the aggravating circumstance, that she caused the death of more than one person in the same event, outweighed any mitigating circumstances. The jury sentenced Christina to death by lethal injection for each murder. When the judge gave the sentence, Christina said, "Thank you," and squeezed her lawyer's hand. After her conviction, Christina initially refused to appeal. The Arkansas Supreme Court ordered a hearing to determine if she was mentally competent to choose death over life in prison. Before that hearing took place, Christina agreed to appeal her conviction on the guilt phase issues. But she told her lawyer not to appeal anything related to her death sentence. She wanted the death penalty to stand. In November 1999, the Arkansas Supreme Court affirmed her conviction. The court ruled that her hospital confession was voluntary, that the jury instructions were correct, and that the photographs of the dead children were properly admitted. The court also noted that even if the confession had been thrown out, there was so much other evidence of her guilt that the result would have been the same. After the appeal was lost, Christina had one more legal option. She could file a post-conviction petition under Rule 37.5, which allows prisoners to challenge their convictions based on ineffective counsel or new evidence. In December 1999, a hearing was held. Christina told the court that she did not want a lawyer appointed to help her with this petition. She said she understood her rights. She said she wanted to waive those rights. 2 doctors evaluated her and found that she was competent to make this decision. The court accepted her waiver. She chose not to pursue any further appeals. Governor Mike Huckabee reviewed the case. Christina did not ask for clemency. She did not want anyone to stop her execution. The governor set the execution date for May 2, 2000. The execution was later carried out on the evening of May 2, 2000, at the Cummins Unit Prison near Pine Bluff, Arkansas. On the day of the execution, Christina was moved from the female death row at the McPherson Unit in Newport to the Cummins Unit. The execution was scheduled to take place between 8 o'clock and 9 p.m. There was a delay of about 18 minutes because the medical team had difficulty finding a suitable vein. Christina agreed to have the catheters placed in veins in her wrists. She was strapped to a gurney. Her last words were, "There is no way no words can express how sorry I am for taking the lives of my babies. Now I can be with my babies, as I always intended." She also said, "I love you, my babies." The lethal injection was administered at 9 p.m. Christina Marie Riggs was pronounced dead 9 minutes later. After her execution, Christina's body was released to her family. Her children, Justin and Shelby, had already been buried. Christina became the first woman executed in Arkansas since the state took over executions from counties in 1913. She was the 5th woman executed in the United States since the death penalty was reinstated in 1976. Her mother, Carol Thomas, had visited her every day in prison before the execution and continued to support her daughter's decision. Christina Marie Riggs died by lethal injection on May 2, 2000, at the age of 28, and was buried in an unmarked grave after her request to have her ashes scattered with her children's ashes was denied by their fathers. Story 5. Tommy Ray Jackson was born on November 15, 1956. He was born in Texas. His family was poor. He had a cousin named Ivory Teeler. The two of them grew up close to each other. They spent time together as children and teenagers. Tommy did not have a stable home life. He did not finish school with good grades. He started getting into trouble when he was young. He did not follow rules. He did not respect other people's property. When Tommy became a young adult, he committed crimes. In April 1977, he was convicted of federal bank robbery. He used a weapon during that robbery. A judge sentenced him to 10 years in federal prison. But Tommy did not serve all 10 years. He was released on parole after serving only 3 years. After his release, Tommy did not change his behavior. In February 1982, he was convicted of burglary of a motor vehicle in Guadalupe County, Texas. A judge sentenced him to 4 years in prison. Again, Tommy did not serve the full sentence. He was paroled after serving only 1 year. Tommy also had a conviction for theft by check. This happened at some point before 1983. He would write checks he knew he could not pay. This showed that he was willing to lie and cheat to get money. After his parole in 1983, Tommy was sent to a halfway house in Austin, Texas. The halfway house was called the Dismas Halfway House. A halfway house is a place where people who left prison live before they are fully free. They have rules. They have a curfew. They must follow a schedule. Tommy did not like being watched. He did not like being told what to do. At the halfway house, Tommy met another man. That man's name was James Otis Clary. James Clary was also on parole. Both men had criminal pasts. Both men wanted to be free to do what they wanted. They became friends quickly. They talked to each other about their plans. They did not want to follow the rules of the halfway house. Tommy had a habit of carrying a weapon. He liked having a gun. He felt powerful with a gun. He had used guns before in his bank robbery. He knew how to use a gun to scare people. He was not afraid to point a gun at someone. Tommy also had a habit of spending money quickly. When he had cash, he bought beer, liquor, food, and marijuana. He liked to share with others. He wanted people to like him. He would buy things for people he just met. This made him feel important. In the months before November 1983, Tommy was living day to day. He did not have a job. He did not own a car. He depended on others for rides. He borrowed things from people. He rented a gun from an acquaintance named Ricky Johnson. He paid $20 to rent that gun. He returned it later, but he would rent it again. Tommy's past showed a pattern. He committed crimes. He went to prison. He got paroled. Then he committed more crimes. He did not learn from his punishment. He did not feel sorry for the people he hurt. He only thought about what he wanted. By November 1983, Tommy was 26 years old. He had spent years in prison. He had been in and out of halfway houses. He had a friend named James Clary who was just like him. They were both looking for a way to get money. They were both willing to break the law to get what they wanted. Tommy had no steady girlfriend. He had no children that he took care of. He spent his time with other criminals. He went to places in East Austin where people knew him. He was not a stranger to violence. He had held a gun to a child's head during a burglary years before. He had forced people into a vault during a bank robbery. He was capable of doing terrible things. But on the morning of November 17, 1983, Tommy and James Clary woke up at the Dismas halfway house. They had a plan. They were going to leave the halfway house. They were not planning to come back. On the morning of November 17, 1983, Tommy Ray Jackson and James Otis Clary left the Dismas halfway house in Austin, Texas. They disabled an alarm so they could leave without being caught. They did not plan to return. Before leaving, Jackson made sure he had a weapon. He had rented a .25 caliber handgun from a man named Ricky Johnson. He paid $20 for the rental. Jackson kept the gun with him. Jackson and Clary spent most of the day in East Austin. They went to different places. They talked to people. They waited for night to come. Their plan was to steal a car. They wanted a car to use for robberies. They looked at several parking lots near the University of Texas campus. They decided the campus was a good place to find a car. Between 11 p.m. and midnight, Jackson and Clary went to the parking lot next to the Petroleum Engineering building on the UT campus. They watched and waited. They saw a young woman walking toward her car. Her name was Rosalind Robison. She was 24 years old. She was a white female. She was an engineering student at the university. She had come to the building to get some notes. Rosalind got into her car. It was a white Oldsmobile Delta 88. Before she could drive away, Jackson and Clary forced her inside her own car. They used the gun to threaten her. Then they drove away in her car with Rosalind inside. Jackson and Clary drove Rosalind to a bank. They found an automated teller machine, or ATM. They took Rosalind's ATM card. They forced her to give them her personal identification number. Then they used the card at the ATM. They withdrew $50. The transaction happened at 11:39 p.m. on November 17, 1983. After getting the cash, they drove north on Interstate 35. While they were driving, Jackson raped Rosalind in the back seat of the car. Later, they exited the highway in Williamson County, Texas. They stopped in a remote area. Then Clary had sexual intercourse with Rosalind. Clary later said that he made a mistake. He used Jackson's real name while Rosalind was present. That meant Rosalind could identify Jackson. Clary said this is why Rosalind had to be killed. Jackson and Clary took Rosalind out of the car. Her hands were bound. They led her near a gravel pit. Jackson then shot her at point-blank range in the back of the head. Rosalind died immediately. After the shooting, Jackson tried to hide the body. He covered her with loose gravel from the pit. Then Jackson and Clary left the scene in Rosalind's white Oldsmobile. Jackson kept the car. He did not try to get rid of it. He drove it around Austin. On the Friday morning after the murder, Jackson and Clary showed up at the home of a woman named Pam McKinney. Jackson drove McKinney to different places in Austin. In the car, McKinney saw a woman's purse in the front passenger area. She also saw Jackson with a gold Seiko watch that had a small white face and a safety-link chain. Jackson tried to give the watch to McKinney's sister, Linda Lindley. Lindley refused to take it. The next morning, Jackson washed his face with an orange towel. He had taken that towel from Rosalind's car. McKinney later took the towel and kept it. Jackson also showed other signs of having money. Over the weekend, he spent money freely. He bought beer, liquor, food, and marijuana. He bought things for anyone who asked. Meanwhile, Rosalind's roommate, Maria Salazar, reported her missing. Rosalind had not come home. Police began looking for her, but her body had not been found yet. Jackson continued to drive Rosalind's car. He had her ATM card. He had her purse. He had her watch. He did not hide any of these things. For days after the murder, on November 21st, 1983, police found Jackson. He was sitting in Rosalind's white Oldsmobile outside a grocery store in Austin. Police arrested him. Inside the car, they found Rosalind's ATM card. They also found her checkbook. Her personal effects were in the trunk of the car. Rosalind's body was not discovered until 1 month later, in December 1983. It was found in a gravel pile in Williamson County. The bullet that killed her was still in her body. A firearms expert later matched that bullet to the gun Jackson had rented from Ricky Johnson. After Tommy Ray Jackson was arrested on November 21st, 1983, the police began their investigation. They had found Rosalind Robison's ATM card and checkbook inside the car Jackson was driving. They also found her personal effects in the trunk. These items connected Jackson directly to Rosalind. The police also examined the car itself. They looked closely at the back seat. They found pubic hairs there. A forensic expert later compared those hairs to Jackson's pubic hair. They matched. This proved Jackson had been in the back seat of Rosalind's car. The police also lifted fingerprints from Rosalind's personal effects found in the trunk. Those fingerprints matched Jackson's fingerprints. This was more physical evidence linking him to the victim and her car. While the police were gathering this evidence, Rosalind's body had not yet been found. But Jackson was already in custody. Then in December 1983, about 1 month after the murder, workers or searchers found a body in a gravel pit in Williamson County. It was Rosalind Robison. She had been shot once in the back of the head. The medical examiner recovered the bullet. The police needed to find the gun. They learned that Jackson had rented a .25 caliber handgun from Ricky Johnson before the murder. When detectives contacted Ricky Johnson, he first lied. He said he knew nothing about the gun. He tried to hide the weapon in a local storm drain. But eventually, Johnson led homicide investigators to the drain. They retrieved the gun from the sewer. Ricky Johnson's brother, James Johnson, also gave a statement. He said he had received the same gun from James Clary after Thanksgiving. He returned it to Ricky. This confirmed the chain of custody of the murder weapon. A firearms expert named Ronald D. Richardson examined the bullet from Rosalind's body. He also examined the gun recovered from the storm drain. He concluded that the bullet was fired from that exact gun. This was the weapon Jackson had rented for $20. Meanwhile, the police interviewed witnesses. Pam McKinney told police about the gold Seiko watch Jackson tried to give away. She also turned over the orange towel Jackson had used to wash his face. Linda Lindley confirmed that Jackson tried to give her the watch. Anita Hall, who was a passenger in the car when Jackson was arrested, testified that Jackson had no car when she first met him, but 3 days later he was driving the white Oldsmobile. The police also obtained bank records. Republic Bank of Austin confirmed that Rosalind had an ATM card. The bank's records showed that on November 17, 1983 at 11:39 p.m., someone used that card to withdraw $50 from an ATM in Austin. This matched the timeline of the kidnapping. James Otis Clary, Jackson's accomplice, was also arrested. Clary made a deal with prosecutors. He agreed to plead guilty. In exchange for his guilty plea, he would not face the death penalty. Instead, he received a sentence of life imprisonment. As part of the deal, Clary agreed to testify against Jackson at trial. On February 10, 1984, a grand jury indicted Tommy Ray Jackson for capital murder. The charge was that he killed Rosalind Robison while also committing robbery, kidnapping, and aggravated sexual assault. Jackson pleaded not guilty. The trial took place before a jury in the 277th District Court of Williamson County, Texas. The trial started in late November 1984. The prosecution presented all the evidence: the ATM card, the fingerprints, the pubic hairs, the gun, the bullet, the witness testimony from Clary, McKinney, Lindley, and others. The defense tried to argue that Jackson was not the shooter, but the physical evidence was strong. Jackson did not take the witness stand in his own defense. He chose not to testify. On December 3, 1984, the jury found Tommy Ray Jackson guilty of capital murder. The next day, December 4, 1984, the same jury heard evidence during a separate punishment hearing. Texas law required the jury to answer two special questions. First, whether Jackson would be a future danger to society. Second, whether he acted deliberately. The jury answered yes to both questions. That meant the sentence was death. The judge formally sentenced Jackson to death by lethal injection. After the trial, Jackson's conviction and death sentence were automatically appealed to the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals. On February 3, 1988, that court affirmed the conviction and sentence. Jackson then asked the United States Supreme Court to review his case. On June 3, 1988, the Supreme Court refused to hear it. Jackson then filed a request for habeas corpus relief in state court on October 17, 1988. A hearing was held. On November 17, 1994, the trial court recommended that relief be denied. The Texas Court of Criminal Appeals agreed on October 2, 1996. Jackson then took his case to federal court. On October 17, 1996, he filed a petition for habeas corpus in the United States District Court for the Western District of Texas. On August 10, 1998, the district court denied relief. Jackson appealed to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. On October 29, 1999, the Fifth Circuit affirmed the denial. Jackson then asked the U.S. Supreme Court again. On March 20, 2000, the Supreme Court denied his final request. On May 4, 2000, Tommy Ray Jackson was executed by lethal injection at the Huntsville unit in Texas. He was 43 years old. He had spent over 15 years on death row. Before the lethal drugs were administered, Jackson made a final statement. He insisted he did not kill Rosalind Robison. He said he could not show remorse for something he did not do. Then he was pronounced dead at 6:24 p.m. James Otis Clary, the accomplice who testified against Jackson, remained in prison serving his life sentence. Rosalind Robison's family, including her father Dr. Roger Robison, witnessed the execution. The case was closed. Story 6. William Joseph Kitchens was born on April 27, 1963. He grew up in Blanchard, Oklahoma. Blanchard is a small town about 30 miles southwest of Oklahoma City. His parents lived there. His mother would later be described as someone who let police search the house. His father was also present, but not much is known about his early home life. The household had problems. Later, lawyers would say that Kitchens had a violent and abusive upbringing. But no one outside the family knew the full details when he was young. Kitchens did not do well in school. He dropped out of school after completing the 8th grade. That was the end of his formal education. He did not get a high school diploma or any further degree. As a young man, Kitchens worked in construction. He also worked as a painter. These were physical jobs that did not require much schooling. He moved from one job to another. He did not stay in one place for a long time. Kitchens started using drugs when he was very young. He began smoking marijuana at age 13. By the time he turned 18, he was using stronger drugs. He became addicted to methamphetamines. He also drank alcohol heavily. He later said that he liked the drugs and the attention he got from using them. His drug and alcohol use would continue for many years. Kitchens also got into trouble with the law early. In 1982, he had an incident at his house. Police officers surrounded his home. Kitchens fired a .22 caliber pellet rifle at the officers. He did not use a real gun that time, but he still resisted arrest. When the police went inside, they found 2 shotguns, a regular rifle, and the pellet rifle. Kitchens told one officer that he would have killed someone if there had not been so many officers present. He also threatened to kill that officer in the future. For this, he was convicted of assault with a dangerous weapon. He received a 2-year sentence. He served only 8 months of that sentence and was released in 1983. After getting out of prison, Kitchens did not change his behavior. In 1985, he committed another serious crime in Oklahoma. He raped a woman. During that attack, he slapped her and strangled her until she nearly passed out. He also threatened to kill her. The same woman later reported that she had seen Kitchens start a fight with someone and throw another woman down some stairs. But at the time, these reports did not stop him. Kitchens also had other minor convictions. He was convicted for concealing stolen property. He was convicted twice for driving while intoxicated. These showed a pattern of not following the law. Kitchens got married at some point. His wife lived with him, but the marriage was not peaceful. He later said that he had violent thoughts about his wife. He also said that when he drank, he sometimes did not know what he was doing. His wife was not mentioned much in public records, but she existed. By early 1986, Kitchens was 22 years old. He had a criminal record. He had drug and alcohol problems. He had been to prison and was released. He had committed a rape in 1985 that was not yet fully prosecuted or punished in a way that kept him locked up. He decided to leave Oklahoma. He went to stay briefly with a brother who lived in Dallas, Texas. Then he started hitchhiking west. He wanted to go to California. He did not have a steady job or a stable home. He carried a .22 caliber pistol with him. He also used drugs and drank alcohol along the way. In May 1986, Kitchens arrived in Abilene, Texas. Abilene is a city in Taylor County. He checked into a motel there. He did not know anyone in Abilene. He was alone. He had some money, but not much. He planned to keep going west. On the morning of May 16, 1986, he was still in that motel room. He took some drugs. He decided to go out that night. That night, he called a taxi to take him from the motel to a nightclub called the Silver Bullet Saloon. He did not know what would happen when he got there. On the evening of May 16, 1986, a group of women went out together. There were 11 or 12 of them. They all worked for a company called United Cable of Abilene. One of these women was Patricia Webb. She was 25 years old. She was married to a firefighter named James Webb. They had a happy marriage. Patricia was described by her friend as not the type to have an intimate encounter with a stranger. The women first went to a restaurant. Then some of them went to a nightclub. Later, they went to a second nightclub. That second club was called the Silver Bullet Saloon. They arrived there around 9:30 p.m. William Kitchens was already at the Silver Bullet. He had taken a taxi from his motel to get there. He did not know any of the women, but he acted friendly. He danced with several of the women. One of those women was Patricia Webb. None of the women saw any sign that Kitchens and Webb were pairing off or forming a relationship. He was just a stranger who seemed nice. The Silver Bullet closed for the night. The group of women left. Kitchens left with them. They all went back to the first club to get their cars. During that trip, Kitchens rode in a different car than Webb. When they reached the parking lot, the group talked about whether to keep the party going. Patricia Webb said she was going to drive Kitchens home. She got into her white Pontiac Fiero. Kitchens got in with her. It was about 12:15 a.m. on May 17, 1986. Webb waved goodbye to her friends and coworkers. Then she drove away. That was the last time any of them saw her alive. Kitchens and Webb drove to the motel where Kitchens was staying. A woman staying in the room next to Kitchens later gave a statement. She said she had seen a man who looked like Kitchens catch a taxi from the room next to hers earlier that evening. Then around 12:45 a.m., she heard the door of the adjoining motel room slam shut. About 15 minutes later, she heard a car start. She looked and saw a light-colored, low-profile sports car with two people inside drive away from the motel. That car was Webb's Pontiac Fiero. Inside the motel room, something happened. Kitchens later admitted that he had sex with Webb. Tests later found sperm on Webb's body, confirming that she had been raped. Kitchens also later told a police officer that he had decided to kill Webb while they were still at the motel. He said he wanted to scare her. He said he wanted to show her that she should not go to a motel room with a stranger. But Webb had made it clear, both at the bar and in the motel room, that she was not going to fool around. Despite that, Kitchens forced her. After the sexual assault, Kitchens forced Webb to get back into her car. He may have made her drive. He later admitted that he may have forced her to take him to a secluded wooded area outside of town. They drove away from the motel around 1 a.m. on May 17th. They ended up on a dark, wooded road about 11 miles outside of Abilene. The road was secluded. There were no houses or streetlights nearby. Kitchens told Webb to stop the car. Then he opened her car door. He yanked her out of the car by her hair. He grabbed her by the throat. He led her into the woods. Once they were far enough from the road, Kitchens attacked her. He beat her. The autopsy later showed bruising on both sides of her face, her lips, her chin, her neck, the back of her head, and the right side of her chest. There was bleeding from two areas of her scalp. The bruising on the right side of her face was caused by a blunt object with an edge. He also strangled her. The strangulation was severe enough that it was one of the causes of death. Then Kitchens took out his .22 caliber pistol. He placed the gun 6 to 8 inches from Webb's face. He shot her in the eye. The bullet went into her brain. The gunshot was also a cause of death. Webb was found fully clothed except for one shoe, which was never recovered. After she was dead, Kitchens took her purse. He removed her money and her credit cards. The internal compartments of the wallet in the purse were torn open. He left the purse near the body. He took Webb's car. He drove away from the woods. He did not call for help. He did not tell anyone what he had done. Kitchens drove Webb's white Pontiac Fiero from Abilene to Fort Worth, Texas. Then he continued driving north into Oklahoma. He arrived in Blanchard, his hometown, sometime on May 17th. He still had the gun. He still had Webb's credit cards, her checkbook, and her driver's license in the car. That evening, around 11 p.m. on May 17th, Kitchens went to a game room in Blanchard. He was seen there. Later, he went to a party in Blanchard. At the party, he was driving the white Fiero with Texas license plates. People saw him with the car. He told people at the party that he had wrecked his car after being chased by police. He was not wearing a shirt. He had a gun with him. Someone at the party told him to hide the gun from the police. Kitchens refused. He said, "I ain't scared of them." He also said, "I'll use the gun on them. I'll use it on you all." He also said that he had used his shirt to wipe his fingerprints off the car. Early in the morning of May 18th, a police officer in Blanchard saw a white Fiero speed off from a traffic light. The officer turned on his lights and chased the car. The Fiero reached speeds of up to 90 miles per hour. The chase went on for about 2 miles. Then the Fiero turned onto a dirt road. The officer lost sight of the car for a moment. But soon he found the car stuck in a ditch. It had been abandoned. The officer looked inside the car. He found Webb's credit cards, her checkbook, and her driver's license. Near the car, on a barbed wire fence, the officer found a shirt. The shirt had dried bloodstains on it. Kitchens had run away from the car on foot. He went back to the party he had been at earlier. He was not wearing a shirt. He still had the gun. He told people at the party that he had wrecked the car after the police chase. Then he left the party. He told people he was going to his parents' house. He arrived at his parents' house that morning without a shirt. He told his mother that he had wrecked his girlfriend's car. His mother let him stay there. After Kitchens left the party and went to his parents' house, the police in Blanchard did not stop looking for the driver of the white Fiero. The officer who had chased the car and found it stuck in the ditch had seen the abandoned vehicle. He had found Webb's credit cards, checkbook, and driver's license inside. He also found the bloody shirt on the fence. The officer knew something was wrong. He reported what he found to other officers. The police started asking questions around Blanchard. People at the party told the officers that a man named William Kitchens had been driving a white Fiero with Texas plates. They said he had run from the police and then come back to the party without a shirt and with a gun. They told the police that Kitchens had said he was going to his parents' house. The police went to the parents' house. They found Kitchens there. He was arrested without a fight. After they took him to jail, officers returned to the parents' house. They asked Kitchens' mother for permission to search for the gun. She gave them permission. She handed over a .22 caliber revolver. That was the gun used to shoot Patricia Webb. The police in Blanchard contacted the police in Abilene, Texas. They told them about the car, the credit cards, the driver's license, and the arrest. The Abilene police wanted to talk to Kitchens. They called him on the telephone while he was in jail in Oklahoma. They asked him if he would agree to come back to Abilene to help them locate Patricia Webb. They said she might still be alive. Kitchens told them that he knew she was dead. He said he had shot her in the head. Even after saying that, Kitchens agreed to help. He gave the Abilene police detailed directions. He told them exactly where to find the body and where to find her purse. The police followed his directions. They went to a wooded area about 11 miles outside of Abilene. They found Patricia Webb's body. She was fully clothed except for one missing shoe. They also found her purse nearby. The purse had no money or credit cards inside. The wallet's inner compartments had been torn. The police in Abilene then traveled to Oklahoma. They took another statement from Kitchens. In that statement, he admitted that he had killed Webb. He said he then drove her car from Abilene to Fort Worth and then to Oklahoma. He did not try to hide what he had done. An autopsy was performed on Webb's body. The medical examiner found that she had been shot in the eye from 6 to 12 inches away. That shot was one cause of death. The other cause was strangulation. The examiner found bruises on her face, lips, chin, neck, head, and chest. There was bleeding on her scalp. One bruise on her face came from a blunt object with an edge. The examiner also found sperm on Webb's body, which proved she had been raped. The bloody shirt found on the fence in Oklahoma was tested. The blood on the shirt matched Webb's blood type. Kitchens was charged with capital murder. The charge included 3 separate crimes that happened during the murder: kidnapping, robbery, and aggravated sexual assault. He went to trial in Taylor County, Texas, in August 1986. His lawyers advised him to plead guilty to murder. He did that, but he pleaded not guilty to capital murder. The jury had to decide if he was guilty of the more serious charge. The jury heard all the evidence. They heard about the rape, the beating, the strangulation, the gunshot, and the stolen car and credit cards. They heard that Kitchens had told an officer he decided to kill Webb at the motel. They heard that he had yanked her out of the car by her hair and led her into the woods. Kitchens testified at the punishment phase. He said he was drunk at the time. He said he believed he was doing these things to his wife. The jury did not accept that as an excuse. The jury found Kitchens guilty of capital murder on August 28, 1986. Then a separate punishment hearing was held. The state showed that Kitchens had a prior conviction for assault with a dangerous weapon from 1982. They also showed that he had raped a different woman in Oklahoma in 1985. That woman testified about how Kitchens had slapped her, strangled her, and threatened to kill her. The state also showed his 2 convictions for driving while intoxicated and 1 for concealing stolen property. The jury took only 15 minutes to decide the punishment. They sentenced William Joseph Kitchens to death. Kitchens spent the next 14 years on death row. He filed many appeals. He appealed to the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals, which affirmed his conviction and sentence on October 30, 1991. The U.S. Supreme Court refused to hear his case on June 1, 1992. He filed a state habeas corpus application in 1993. After a 2-day hearing, it was denied in 1996. He filed a federal habeas corpus petition in 1997. A federal district judge rejected all 25 of his claims on November 26, 1997. He appealed to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. On September 28, 1999, the Fifth Circuit also denied relief. Kitchens did not ask the U.S. Supreme Court to review that decision. He told his lawyers not to file more appeals. On May 9, 2000, William Joseph Kitchens was executed by lethal injection in Huntsville, Texas. Before he died, he turned his head to look at Patricia Webb's husband, her sister, her brother, and her niece. He said, "I want you to know that Patty was always faithful to you, that I forced her for everything that she did, and I am sorry." He also asked God to forgive him. He was pronounced dead at 6:22 p.m., 11 minutes after the lethal drugs began to flow. Patricia Webb's husband watched the execution. He said he did not know if he would ever find peace, but he might in time. William Joseph Kitchens was 37 years old. He was the 213th person executed in Texas since 1976. The case was closed. Story 7. Michael Lee McBride was born on January 3, 1962. He grew up in Texas. Not much is known about his early childhood or his parents. But as a young man, he developed a quick temper. He had trouble controlling his anger. McBride worked as a bartender. He held this job at a country club in Lubbock, Texas. Later he also worked as a bar manager. He moved to Lubbock for a reason. He wanted to be close to his girlfriend. Her name was Christian Fisher. She was 18 years old and attended Texas Tech University in Lubbock. McBride and Fisher had been dating for about 11 months. Their relationship was not calm. People who knew them said it was a very stormy relationship. Fisher helped McBride with money often. She gave him money because he needed it. Fisher's mother did not like McBride. The mother thought Fisher saw him too frequently. Fisher's friends also noticed problems. A friend named Karen Tidwell said McBride had a very explosive and short-tempered personality. Tidwell said Fisher reacted to McBride with fear. But Fisher still tried to help him. In 1979, when McBride was 17 years old, he did something strange. He drove his car through a person's backyard. Then he drove into the person's garage. He knocked everything into a bedroom. When he got out of the car, he swore at the homeowner. The homeowner pushed him because she was upset by his language and his attitude. Then McBride threatened to sue her. In the spring of 1985, McBride was at a bar in Fort Worth. A man borrowed a cigarette from Fisher. The man then ignored McBride's order to leave their table. McBride became angry. He punched the man in the face twice. Around the same time, McBride got angry at Karen Tidwell. A few days earlier, Tidwell had not told McBride that she and Fisher went to a bar. McBride was angry about this. One day, he saw Tidwell parked in a parking lot. He jumped an island in the parking lot with his car. He drove pretty fast toward Tidwell. He tried to run her over. Tidwell said this kind of outburst was typical for McBride. She said that in the 10 months she had known him before the later events, she had seen him lose his temper many times. In January or February of 1985, McBride stormed into a bar. Fisher, Tidwell, and a friend were playing pool. McBride forced Fisher to leave. He pulled her out the door. During the summer of 1985, Fisher's car was hit from behind by another young woman. A sheriff's deputy arrived. The deputy did not give a ticket to the young woman. McBride became belligerent with the deputy. He argued and was aggressive. Another incident happened in 1985 at McBride's apartment in Fort Worth. He was angry because Fisher and a friend named Leslie Holder had gone out one evening. McBride picked up a chair. He broke the windows in his apartment with the chair. Later, a manager of the apartment complex came to talk to him about a broken window. McBride first acted calm. Then he became violent. He threatened the manager. The manager later checked McBride's apartment when he was not there. She found fist-sized holes in almost every wall. She also found a lot of guns and a set of weights. When McBride moved out, he owed $520 for damages. On another occasion in 1985, a Fort Worth police officer worked as a security guard at McBride's apartment complex. The officer answered a disturbance call. McBride became enraged. He used profane and explicit language. He threatened violence against the officer. The officer had already identified himself as a peace officer. 16 days before a later event, Lubbock police officers answered an aggravated assault call at Fisher's apartment. The time was 4:23 in the morning. Leslie Holder, a mutual friend, tried to get into Fisher's apartment. She heard Fisher yelling for help. McBride had entered Fisher's apartment with a key. He attacked a young man named James Halser, who was sleeping on the couch. A friend named Cody Minnick was there. Minnick said McBride was screaming, "You are sleeping with my girlfriend." Minnick and Halser wrestled with McBride. A glass bookcase broke. After they subdued McBride, he yelled at Fisher to bend down and pick up his keys. Then he picked up someone's sunglasses, crushed them, and threw them on the floor. He grabbed his own sunglasses and left. Later that same day, McBride went for a drive with Leslie Holder. He said he wanted to talk about his problems with Fisher. But the drive was short. McBride was roaring up behind cars and then slamming on his brakes. Holder was scared. After McBride fled the apartment that morning, Holder and Fisher found a teddy bear with its head ripped off. Inside the bear was a note from McBride. The note used profanity and was threatening. Also in 1985, McBride had a job as a bartender in Lubbock. Fisher was still attending Texas Tech. But Fisher was not happy in Lubbock. She was preparing to move home to Fort Worth. Her friends encouraged this move. They said McBride's behavior was unpredictable. On October 18, 1985, James Halser, Cody Minnick, and Karen Tidwell came to Lubbock to visit Fisher. McBride was angry that Halser and Minnick were staying in Fisher's apartment for the weekend. On October 19, 1985, McBride entered Fisher's apartment with a key. He attacked Halser while Halser lay sleeping on the couch. This was the same incident described above. After the struggle, McBride left. 2 days later, on October 21, 1985, McBride called Fisher on the phone. On October 21, 1985, Michael McBride called Christian Fisher on the phone. During this phone call, McBride and Fisher talked about ending their relationship. Fisher wanted some money that McBride owed her. McBride told Fisher to come to his house alone. He said he would give her a painting. He said the painting was worth the amount of money he owed her. Before the phone call ended, McBride said these words to Fisher: "If I can't have you, nobody will." Fisher told her friends about the phone call. The friends were Cody Minnick, Karen Tidwell, and James Halser. They were all worried about Fisher's safety. They did not think she should go to McBride's house alone. So the four friends decided to go together to McBride's house. They used 2 cars. Fisher and James Halser rode in one car. Minnick and Tidwell rode in a second car. They drove to McBride's house in Lubbock. When they arrived, Fisher parked her car in front of McBride's house. Minnick and Tidwell parked their car several car lengths behind Fisher's car. It was nighttime. McBride's house was very dark. There were no lights on inside or outside. Fisher got out of her car. She walked to McBride's front door. She knocked on the door. No one answered. She waited. Still no one came to the door. So she turned and started walking back toward her car in the street. While Fisher was walking back, Minnick saw something. He saw a figure moving behind his car. Then he heard the sound of a gun being cocked. McBride appeared from the darkness. He was holding a .30 caliber M1 carbine rifle. The rifle had a 30-round clip. McBride pointed the rifle at Minnick and Tidwell. McBride demanded that Minnick and Tidwell get out of their car. He said he would kill them if they did not get out. Then McBride took the butt of the rifle and smashed out the driver's side window of Minnick's car. After that, McBride fired 2 shots into the air. Minnick later described these as warning shots. A neighbor named Patrick Potter saw what was happening. Potter lived in an apartment behind a house across the street from McBride's. He was sitting inside his apartment. He saw a man matching McBride's description run past his open front door. Potter's dogs chased after the man. Potter followed. He saw McBride smash Minnick's window. Potter went back home to tell his wife to call the police. Then he went back outside to the scene. When he returned, he heard McBride load his weapon again. Back in the street, McBride turned his attention to Fisher and Halser. Minnick used this moment to escape. He ran to a neighbor's home to get help. Karen Tidwell stayed and watched from a distance. She saw McBride and Fisher struggling with the rifle in the middle of the street. Fisher looked at McBride. She yelled at him, "You won't do it." Then McBride fired the rifle. He shot Fisher. He did not stop at 1 shot. He shot her many times. Fisher was hit 10 times. The bullet struck her face, chest, abdomen, and thigh. Fisher fell to the ground. But McBride did not stop. He continued to shoot Fisher at close range, even after she was already on the ground. After Fisher was dead, McBride turned toward her car. James Halser was still inside the car. He was in the driver's seat. McBride fired several shots through the windshield of the car. The bullets repeatedly struck Halser. Then McBride moved. He hopped around to the driver's side of the car. He smashed out that window. He fired again at Halser. At one point, McBride placed the rifle directly against Halser's head and fired. Halser was hit 9 times. One of the bullets destroyed his heart. That wound was fatal. Both Fisher and Halser died at the scene. They were both 18 years old. After killing Fisher and Halser, McBride turned the rifle on himself. He placed the rifle under his chin and fired. The bullet traveled through his mouth and exited his forehead. He did not die from this wound. Police officers and emergency medical workers arrived at the scene. They found McBride on his hands and knees on the ground. He was trying to crawl toward his rifle. Several witnesses kicked the rifle away from him. McBride was violent and aggressive with the EMS workers. He resisted their efforts to help him. He made threatening remarks and used profanity. He admitted that he shot Fisher and Halser. He said, because it was time for them to go. EMS workers took McBride to the hospital. At the hospital, he became more cooperative. He even spoke to a male nurse. He said to the nurse, "If you ever need any pointers or information on how to handle your women, just let me know." The police arrived at McBride's house within minutes after Patrick Potter's wife called them. When the first officers got to the scene, they saw 2 bodies on the ground. Christian Fisher was lying in the street. James Halser was slumped inside the car. Both were clearly dead from gunshot wounds. The officers also saw McBride on his hands and knees, bleeding from his head wound. Witnesses pointed to the rifle on the ground. An officer kicked it farther away from McBride. Emergency medical workers treated McBride at the scene. He was still conscious and talking. He continued to resist and use profanity. The workers put him on a stretcher and took him to the hospital. Police officers followed the ambulance. At the hospital, doctors treated the gunshot wound under McBride's chin. The bullet had gone through his mouth and out his forehead. He survived. While he was in the hospital, police stayed with him. They did not formally arrest him yet because he was receiving medical care. But he was not free to leave. Once McBride was stable, police officers read him his legal rights. He agreed to talk. He made the comment to the male nurse about handling women. He also repeated to the police that he shot Fisher and Halser because it was time for them to go. The officers wrote down his statements. Police collected evidence from the scene. They took the M1 carbine rifle. They counted the spent shell casings. They photographed Fisher's body with 10 gunshot wounds. They photographed Halser's body with 9 gunshot wounds. They measured where the cars were parked. They took statements from Karen Tidwell, Cody Minnick, and Patrick Potter. All 3 witnesses described the same sequence of events. McBride was released from the hospital after his wound healed. At that point, police formally arrested him. He was taken to the Lubbock County Jail. A grand jury reviewed the evidence. The grand jury decided there was enough proof to charge McBride with capital murder. The charge was for murdering 2 people, Christian Fisher and James Halser, during the same criminal transaction. The case went to trial in the 99th District Court of Lubbock County, Texas. McBride pleaded not guilty. The trial began in early 1988. The prosecutors presented the witnesses, Tidwell, Minnick, Potter, and the police officers. They presented the rifle and the bullet casings. They presented McBride's own words from the hospital. The defense argued that McBride acted in the heat of passion. They said the killings were not capital murder because he did not plan them ahead of time. The jury did not agree with the defense. On February 11, 1988, the jury found McBride guilty of capital murder. After the guilty verdict, a separate punishment hearing was held. Texas law required the jury to answer 3 special questions. One question asked if McBride would be a threat to society in the future. A psychiatrist testified that in his opinion, McBride would continue to be a threat. The jury answered yes to that question. The jury answered yes to the other questions as well. Under Texas law, those answers required a death sentence. The judge sentenced McBride to death. McBride's conviction and sentence were automatically appealed to the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals. That court affirmed the conviction on June 16, 1993. McBride then asked the United States Supreme Court to hear his case. The Supreme Court denied his request on June 27, 1994. McBride filed a petition for writ of habeas corpus in Federal District Court on April 5, 1995. The District Court denied habeas relief on February 16, 1996. But the court gave McBride permission to appeal to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. The Fifth Circuit affirmed the denial of habeas relief on July 29, 1997. McBride again asked the Supreme Court to hear his case. The Supreme Court denied his request on January 20, 1998. McBride then went back to Texas State Court. He filed another application for writ of habeas corpus. The Texas Court of Criminal Appeals denied this application on February 16, 2000. With all appeals exhausted, the state of Texas set an execution date. McBride was scheduled to die by lethal injection on May 11, 2000. He was held on death row at the Polunsky Unit in Livingston, Texas. On the day of the execution, he was taken to the execution chamber in Huntsville. Before the lethal drugs were administered, McBride was given a chance to make a final statement. He said, "God bless all of you." Then the drugs began to flow into his arm. As he felt the effects, he said, "Pretty cool, I feel it in the back of my throat. Bye." A few minutes later, Michael Lee McBride was pronounced dead at the age of 38. Christian Fisher and James Halser remained dead, and their families continued to live with the loss.